name's Dr. Beth Mosley. I'm a lead clinical psychologist in the Psychology in Schools team that's based in West Suffolk currently. And I'm here today to present to you on COVID-19 and well-being among young people. We are not used to living like this. And for many young people, the changes have been very dramatic. They've not been attending school for 6 months. Again, unprecedented times. So we've all had to negotiate these big changes, and we cannot deny that COVID-19 has affected many aspects of our lives. It's affected our capacity to work, affected our ability to socialise and spend time with the people we care about. And it's also increased anxieties about health and well-being. Now, at the same time as that, this has brought many difficult challenges for many families and young people. It's also brought positive issues. So, for example, some families and young people have described that the opportunity to spend more time with their families has been immensely helpful for their well-being. The opportunities to move away from being in a very highly pressured work environment or school environment has also given people a sense of respite and a break. So it's important to acknowledge that not all the changes have been negative, and I'm sure you are trying to think about what some of the positive changes may have been for you in your work life and how you might want to integrate that going forward into the next academic year. We know that education has seen major unprecedented changes during this time, notably in that schools have been shut for the majority of students and teachers have had to engage students in online home learning, which has brought its own challenges. But as we prepare to return to school in the new academic year and have all of our students back, I think we can all agree that this in itself is bringing some anxieties for young people and teachers and teaching staff and school staff alike, but also there may be some excitement about the opportunity to return to a place where we feel we belong, a community, and actually get back to some kind of normality. So what is the likely impact that COVID may well have had on young people whilst they've been off school? And of course, have to hold in mind that for some young people, they have still been attending school during this time if they're vulnerable students or key worker students. Well, some of the things that we can consider is illness itself. Some young people may have witnessed others being ill in their family, and they may have been ill themselves, or they may just have had an increased awareness of the fear of becoming ill. There may have been losses. There may have been losses around people actually losing a loved one. There may be bereavements, but there may also be losses around family work, parental work. Pressures around relationships could create losses in terms of family breakdown. We know that young people often rely on education and the routine and structure that creates in their life and all of the social network they have through school and the care and the opportunity to learn. And as you appreciate, for many young people, this has changed significantly during this time. For some young people, there will have been a relief that they didn't have to do their Year 11 and Year 13 exams. But for many young people, this will actually feel like a bereavement and a significant loss. For those who were working really hard towards those pieces of work that they were doing for their exams, to not have the opportunity to put that hard work into practice and to actually perform is a significant loss. And I know as I'm recording this, results are coming in, and I think there's much disappointment about the way that their results have been graded. So I don't think we can underestimate the impact that this is having on young people in a negative way because they haven't had the opportunity to do those exams. But again, there'll be a cohort of students who have really benefited and aren't too worried about that reduced grade that they might have because they've had the sheer relief of not having to complete those exams. Friendships for many young people may have changed, may have been obviously not able to meet with friends physically, and that obviously affects different age groups. So for secondary school aged young people, they may have been able to stay in contact with one another through gaming or social media, But for younger people, that might be more challenging, and they may have felt more isolated during this time. A sense of independence, and I think this is incredibly true for all of us, but also for adolescents at a very key point in their life when they should be spending more time away from home. They're actually have been confined to just their immediate family members and have reduced opportunities to develop those independent skills and those social skills with their peer group. There's obviously the lost opportunities of extracurricular activities, which we know are really enriching for young people's lives. And so we might see that some young people struggling with low mood because they've not been able to participate in those things that are important and that they value. And of course, I don't think you can see this because I'm recording, but what's just come up is support systems. For many young people, school offers a huge area of support for them with their friendship groups and the staff in those schools, but not just schools, but extended family and other friendship groups within the family that could be really supportive to a young person. For some period of time during the lockdown, these children will not have had access to those support systems. And for any young person who may be having a specialist mental health service or getting support from the voluntary sector or social care, again, their care package will have significantly reduced, and they may have only had phone or online contact. So there is going to be a group of young people who have not been able to have the level of support that they will have required during the lockdown period, and actually reduction in support from the life that they were leading before during a more tricky time. And isolation. So I think we can all agree that during that period of time of lockdown, feeling isolated and feeling cut off from the rest of the world is one of the challenges that we have all had to face. Now, as I mentioned, there are some families who have really valued extra time together. There are other families where the difficulties of being confined in a small, or not necessarily small space, but being confined in a space together for an extended period of time have led to significant problems. We know that during this period there's been a big increase in domestic violence. We know there's been an increase in calls from children who are struggling to deal with their parents abusing alcohol. We also know, and we can't escape it, it's on the news every day, the economic consequences and the anxieties about increases in unemployment and the bigger gap in socioeconomic status and for disadvantaged families. We know that there's been a significant number of families filing for divorce during this period as well. So it's important to hold in mind as young people come back to school, some of them may have had a really positive, nurturing experience, some may have had a meh experience, and others may have actually experienced quite significant difficulties. And that actually coming back to school is going to be the time that they may reveal those difficulties, or the first opportunity that they've been able to talk to somebody else about some of the challenges and traumas they might have faced during that time. We know that for some young people, the lockdown period has had an impact on mental health. Healthwatch Surfax 2020 have conducted a huge survey across Suffolk looking at the impact of the lockdown on young people's mental health. 35% report their mental health being worse, 50% report no change, and 15% report an improvement. So it's quite important to hold in mind that for many people, there's kind of like everything seems okay. But what we know is for the young people who were already struggling with their mental health, those tend to be the ones who have continued to struggle more with their mental health during lockdown. But it's also important to acknowledge that for some people, not just young people, but parents and teachers also reported this, that there had been an improvement on their well-being. And I know personally from working with some young people that during the lockdown period, their anxieties have significantly reduced and they've actually really benefited from not being at school. So what can we expect going back? Well, Again, as I've kind of drawn out already, people's experience of lockdown will have been varied, not just the students that we see or the parents that could bring those students to school, but also our work colleagues too. So everybody's going to have had a different experience at different points during that period of time. Some will have been thriving, some may have been struggling. And I guess we just have to acknowledge that for all of us, for leaders, for teachers, for pastoral school staff, for any member in the school community, parents and students as well, we're all doing something for the very first time. We're all coming back to school following a pandemic for the very first time. So we are creating and navigating a new normal. And with that, naturally, doing things for the first time makes us feel unsettled, uncertain. It's scary, and that's okay. And I think we have to really keep a perspective on that. We have to consider this new experience is only going to last for so long. We're only going to do this September once, and we'll get through it. And also think about the expectations that we set for ourselves and others, and keep those realistic based on the fact that we are facing all of these new challenges with lots of unknowns and no definite answers, and therefore we do have to be kind to ourselves and each other. So based on this, essentially we're thinking about this adjustment period. We know that we've got a really comprehensive plan. I'm sure if you're working in schools at the moment, you know what your plan is to return to school in the next week or so. And when we get back to school, I think we can all appreciate, and this is the incredible, wonderful thing about schools, is that they are able to adapt and be so responsive, sometimes reactive, to the dilemmas and challenges they face. So we are going to go back to school in September with a plan, and it's likely that the plan will need to be modified and changed. So we're all going to have to develop a degree of flexibility and adaptability to cope with that. We have to hold in mind it's really normal to need time to adjust and adapt. So if we're all finding September or October very difficult, and September can be difficult anyway coming back to school after the summer holidays, that just adjustment from being away and coming back to the full-on pace of school life can be really hard for all of us and students alike. So I think we just have to consider that that adjustment period needs to be more than normal. And that for some young people, this transition is going to be more difficult than others. And for some staff as well. Now, what we know about negotiating difficulty, regardless of whether we thrived during lockdown or we had significant traumas and struggles during lockdown, that relationships are absolutely key to how successfully we can manage that uncertainty. We know secure and positive relationships provide comfort in times of distress and uncertainty, not just for the students, but for adults too. We know that young people place great value on their friendships, and these will be an important focus for them. Reconnecting with their friendship groups will be an essential element. For young people who are transitioning from primary to secondary school, they'll have the unique challenge of also meeting new people and having to form new relationships in a new environment. There are going to be the new physical or social distancing barriers that everybody's going to have to adjust to and kind of change their behaviour around, which is going to be different for different people. I saw something on LinkedIn where there was 3 boxes with different coloured bands in them. Red was for wearing when you go back to work to say, hey, I am really following the social distancing rules to the letter. I'm really stressed about this. Yellow was, hey, you know, I'm pretty relaxed. I'm okay either way. And green was, hey, I'm a hugger. I'm really relaxed and I'm not worried at all. And I just thought this was interesting acknowledgement, really, that all of us are going to be having a different view or a different value on those social distancing measures. And it's kind of like an invisible thing that we don't know how our work colleague or how that student or parent is feeling about the social distancing, whether they're following it very, very closely or they're more relaxed about it. And it's very difficult to sustain this unnatural social distancing And for some of us, we might not have the degree of heightened anxiety to keep us following those rules. So I think this is going to be a new period of learning for all of us. And I think holding in mind the need for respect, really, and mindfulness around other people's position and view on social distancing is really important, and to ensure that nobody feels stigmatized for the position they take on that. And I guess the key is with young people returning to school is that many of them will be looking for support from trusted adults, reconnecting with previous relationships with trusted adults, and hopefully intending to invest in new relationships with their teachers or tutors that may be new to them. So what might we notice when we return to school? Well, we know for sure that heightened emotions are definitely going to be a significant thing for all of us. We're all going to feel more likely to be on high alert and have a bit more of that stress hormone, cortisol and adrenaline running around our bodies. So the emotional distress that we might see in our colleagues and young people are anxiety and worry, some sadness, grief and bereavement and anger. And I don't know about you, but during this period, I have certainly felt all of those feelings, sometimes in a single day. So I think it's important to acknowledge that we will all be experiencing these feelings across the day or across the week. And so what might we notice if we are seeing this in other people? We may notice some withdrawal. This is particularly true for young people who are less likely to let their emotional distress out. And so for some young people who might not normally require extra support at school, we might notice a withdrawing of their interest or kind of social isolation. We may see some crying, low energy and lack of willingness to engage. We may see young people being hypervigilant and really overly anxious and preoccupied with keeping an eye out for danger cues. And that, of course, makes sense that if you're feeling any of those feelings above, that you're going to struggle to pay attention and concentrate, which, of course, is a necessary part of being in the learning environment. Young people might be more irritable. And I say young people, I mean everyone, I mean staff as well. We might be seeking proximity to those people we trust. It could be a best friend that we don't want to leave their side of, or a trusted teacher, or it might be a parent that we don't want to leave in the morning. We might be looking for more reassurance from others and asking for constant reassurance to ensure that things are going to be okay. We may see young people testing the boundaries. I don't know about you, but I've had a few occasions where I haven't deliberately tested the boundaries, but in a supermarket, I've gone the wrong way in an aisle. And in the stress of trying to shop in this new way at the beginning of COVID, if somebody says you're going the wrong way, depending on how they say it and how they address you, can create quite a strong response in yourself, either quite positive or quite negative, and also depending on how your day is going as well. And I think it's really important to hold this in mind, because these experiences that we might have had in the supermarket doing the wrong thing, not deliberately, by accident, are kind of similar experiences that young people may well have when they come back to school, and they may unwittingly be breaking some of the school rules that we're going to be really clear about. And other young people may just be testing those boundaries, not having had much structure during the last 6 months, or as a method of getting more input and support from staff because they struggle to find other ways of asking for help. And of course, with all of this, I'm sure that you will be expecting that there'll be some young people who may find it difficult to even get into school. It's not all negative emotions. There's also positive emotions in there too. And I'm pretty excited about next week and seeing all of my work colleagues at school and just being in that environment, the buzz of the environment. It's quite hard working from home all the time. The level of self-motivation you need, the screen fatigue you get, the juggling of childcare whilst trying to work as well. So there's a lot of excitement for me about going back. Curiosity as well. What's it going to feel like? How is it going to be different? How have other people managed? How will I cope this first month coming back? How will I thrive, and what will be the challenges? Now, during lockdown, there's been opportunities for creativity, particularly in my line of work, and I'm sure in yours as well. And that's been massively exciting. I never dreamed I'd be recording podcasts ever. And here I am, having done a number of them. I also never thought I'd be pre-recording my presentations. And again, these new ways of working have inspired lots of creativity. So what new creativity and opportunities will come from this new way of being when we come back in September? And I think we can also consider pride in our community, pride in our work colleagues, the work that has been done, and the amount of anxiety that we have had to manage and contain in ourselves in order to deliver the care that we've been giving to young people during the lockdown period. And again, we are going to have to do as we go back to work. And I imagine for many young people, they are very proud of their school and their class and their achievements at school, and having that sense of pride as they return to school and that sense of belonging in their community will be immensely positive for them. And I just think it's really important that we need to consider that this range of emotions that I've just described are understandable reactions to difficult circumstances. If we weren't responding like that with those range of emotions, then actually there'd be area for concern, really. We are human beings and we are designed to experience a range of emotions. Those emotions help us take action and help us look after ourselves and each other. They let other people know what's going on for us and that we might need support and help. So it's really important to acknowledge that these range of emotions are a very normal response to the crisis we've been in, and also a normal response to the feelings of stress. Stress is a very neurochemical based thing, and so to have those feelings is also a very natural response to those stress hormones that have been in our body. And I think what we're all trying to strive towards really in our communities, within our schools, within society more generally through this time, is this notion that it's actually okay to not be okay. And I think that's a really important part of school culture for young people and for staff, to believe that if you are really struggling, that's okay. Let's think of a way that we can give you some help or support today, so that today can be manageable, and maybe let's be creative about how we can think about the next of the week, the rest of the week, so that we can really get some support in place to help you get through. So what we know is, and what I know in my profession, is that it's just so important to not push these difficult feelings away, but instead notice them and express them. Find ways of putting words to them, or ways to share them with others, to draw them, whatever it might need to be. For me, writing is a really helpful tool for expressing the things that I just find completely overwhelming. And we know that there is something about actually writing and putting those feelings into words in that way that actually kind of helps process those difficult feelings. So I think for all of us, as we return to work, we just have to hold on to the fact we're all human, and we're all going to find this time difficult in different ways, and positive in other ways. And the importance of relationships is key. That as an individual, and as I go into my workplace, there is no magic wand other than just ordinary magic. That if you're thinking, how am I going to manage giving young people what they need if they get distressed, or a staff member if they get distressed, I promise you that that young person or that staff member, what they need you to do is to be able to just spend a little bit of time truly listening to them, helping kind of allow their distress to be there, and maybe give some understanding, help make sense. So what we all need when we're distressed, whether we're a young child or an adult, is we need a degree of comfort, but we also need somebody to help us make sense of things. But the comfort comes first, because until we have that comfort, our physical system is on high alert and we can't listen to what anybody's saying. So in the first instance, I would just say, creating that space within yourself to be able to just be alongside someone. You don't have to do anything for them. You just need to be with them in that distress. And Brené Brown's got a lovely clip on empathy, which is really worth watching and exemplifies that beautifully. Every time we connect, even if it's just with a proper greeting in the morning, that time that we just spend to ask somebody how they is, but really mean it when we ask them. Every time that we offer that warmth and compassion just in our general body language and ways of being, we are offering a degree of comfort. We're offering support and help to those around us. Emotions are contagious. And if we can somehow manage to do that, we can offer that warmth and care and slow ourselves down a little bit, then actually what we'll find is that the people around us will pick up on that, and they will begin to feel those feelings and show those feelings to other people, and on it goes. You create this healthy cycle. So every time we respond with human kindness, we are helping. And so I think it's really important to hold on to that. We don't need psychologists and counsellors with years of training to provide support to people as they come back to school. What we need is for people just to be human and be kind and invest in listening and being supportive and not being too preoccupied with. We know one of the other things that's really critical is structure and routine. For lots of us, we've completely lost that. So what we need to do is ensure that we're providing that structure and routine in schools. And I'm sure that you'll be doing that, and that will be a big part of the work that you've already. We want to support resilience. We want to focus on helping young people understand how they may have overcome adversity during this time. We want to allow them to name and mourn the losses that they may have experienced, but also celebrate the achievements, no matter how small they are. And I think what we learn about ourselves during these difficult times is the strengths we have and the capacity we have to manage them, and that we can actually rely on one another to support one another. And I think this is the most important thing, that we want the whole school experience to be about everybody being willing to be vulnerable enough to support one another. It's important to hold in mind, and you can look back at this slide, that there are some young people and staff who may have increased risk of vulnerability factors, and these are listed here. And I think we need to be mindful of noticing those who may need extra help. And so the red flags for that are those who are struggling to adjust over a period of time, even with the support in place. Those whose emotional distress may keep going up rather than come down. Those who may miss school or miss work or avoid school entirely. Those who just kind of are isolating themselves or not engaging. That sense of hopelessness or being stuck. So those students or members of staff may require more support and help. Now, as the Psychology in Schools team, we have created a resource pack. We know that schools are being bombarded with endless amounts of resources and information, and we've tried to condense that right down for you and make something completely usable that you can take off the shelf and use straight away without even having to spend too much time thinking or preparing. So what we've done is we've created a back to school assembly for students in secondary school, a welcome back guideline for staff to guide leaders on how they would welcome back their staff, a leadership team briefing document which talks about lots of things to do with changing behaviour and supporting wellbeing following a pandemic. And we've also provided a list of the best resources that we've found for secondary schools and primary schools on COVID-19 and mental health. Now, all of those information can be found at the link at the bottom of this document. So here is the information about the back to school assembly. Again, I'll allow you to read through that in your own time because I'm conscious of the fact I'm over. The welcome back guidelines for staff is we're basically basing this on key priorities and the leadership briefing document. We've also created some pre-recorded training for school staff on psychological support. These are 45-minute to hour-long sessions that are pre-recorded so staff can do them in their own time or during the PD day. We provided one on how to provide community psychological support to your students and work colleagues, one on guidelines for leaders and managers in supporting their staff group team's wellbeing on their return to work, one on looking after your own wellbeing, one on supporting vulnerable children, and one on understanding emotion-based school avoidance and how to help. We've also put together some resources for managing anxiety psychoeducation for students. So what we've done is we've created an assembly which can be used in a tutorial situation as well and can be extended. And we've also created a 100-minute lesson. In the schools that we're working in, we're planning to run these lessons, one per year group, each week for the first half term, in order that the young people that have been identified in the school as struggling with anxiety and people are worried about struggling with anxiety will get to attend that lesson. They'll then have the opportunity to buddy up with, there'll be about 8 to 10 of them in the lesson. They'll get the opportunity to buddy up with that group and perhaps touch base with them. And we're thinking about the concept of a coaching group so that they can support one another going forward. And we're going to try and make that 100-minute lesson available to everybody to use once we've trialled it for the first week at school and feel confident that any member of school staff could use that themselves, and therefore it would be accessible as a resource to be used in school by any teacher who was happy to teach it, and could very easily fit into the PSHE curriculum. Finally, for families, we've put together a number of podcasts. One at the beginning of lockdown where we talked about the challenges of lockdown for parents. We've done one on sleep, one on gaming and screen time, and one on supporting your child with anxieties about returning to school. Again, these are all accessible through the links on this. I hope this presentation has been helpful. I think the key thing to hold in mind is that if we can engender a sense of belonging in our communities, and we can do that by being compassionate and warm, and we first and foremost can only do that if we really look after ourselves. So I think supporting your own well-being and keeping your own self robust and thinking about all the strategies that you need to use to keep yourself well is key. Put yourself first, and then from there you will be able to support those around you by being available and being willing to listen and use your talents that you have, you absolutely have, to not only teach but also to support those around you in the incredible work that you do.